Hello and welcome to a short little tutorial of Code with Clayton. I just wanted to take a couple minutes here and show you some tricks that I learned early on. We just discussed random topics. So this isn't going to take very long. Today I'm going to discuss with you HTML attributes and how they work specifically with JavaScript and even within JavaScript jQuery. So we're going to do a little CodePen project here where we use a lot of attributes. And I just wanted to give you a quick little rundown of those attributes and how they work with JavaScript. Probably pretty basic to some, but it was a tricky concept for me to learn at first, and it might be very helpful to you. So in this project here, we're just going to start from scratch here. We're just going to call this, we'll just name this project here, jQuery and attributes. All right, great, cool. So we'll just start here with a section, and we'll go ahead and make that up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make kind of a little display toggle, so something just very basic. And we're going to have a list. And inside of that list, we are going to have 3 elements. Whoops. That's what you get whenever you're used to typing in Atom and it automatically finishes stuff for you. You get lazy and you can't type anymore. Oh gosh, and then you hit double enter because you're nervous because you're doing this in front of people and you realize just how awkward you really are. Okay, so we're going to do inside of this list item, we are going to simply type item 1, item 2, item 3. Great. Now we're going to come in here and I'm going to set this up in CSS processing just because I'm a little bit lazier and like doing that. And then I'm also going to bring in the JavaScript library of jQuery. So if we just come here and we type in jQuery, we're going to go ahead and add that, and we're going to save. Perfect. Great. All right, so now we're able to process. So we've got our 3 list items here, and then underneath that, we are going to have another section that is going to just contain panels. All right, now these panels are just going to be some squares, and they're going to show, we'll make them divs, and these panels are going to show based on what is clicked. All right, so we'll have 3 panels. Okay, and we'll name this panel 1, panel 2, and panel 3. Great. Cool. So what we're going to do is when we click on one of these, it's going to make these panels show, and then we're going to add a little bit of styling just to make it a little bit more fun. So on our untitled list item, let's go ahead and make that a flex box. Okay. And then we will also take the list style away from that. And then with the li elements below that, we will do a width of, let's just say, I don't know, 120 pixels. I'm not worried about this being responsive, just worried about making a little space. And we will go ahead and do some padding around those. We'll make the padding, make them nice big button like 20 up top, and we'll do 20 on the sides as well. And then we will make some margin in between them. We'll do 30 pixels in between them, and that's ugly. I'm just going to take that away. Great. And then we're going to put a background on these, and we're going to make the background be a nice little off gray shade. Okay. And then we're going to text align, center these. Perfect. Great. So now let's talk about parameters, attributes, and everything within our HTML elements. So everybody knows, of course, you've got things called IDs and classes. What you may not know is that those are actually just HTML parameters. And of course, those are accessible within our JavaScript. Well, another concept here is you can put whatever you want. Your browser isn't going to interpret all attributes, but we know the basic ones: IDs, class, style. These are ones that our DOM, our browser, this guy right here, is programmed to interpret. But I could also write my own random variable here as a parameter or as an attribute, and I could just call it random attribute. And my browser doesn't know to do anything with that, but I can access that inside of JavaScript and use it to do whatever I want it to do. So we're going to make one. I usually like to put data dash at the front of it, just because it makes it easier for me to know that this is some sort of custom data, but it could literally be anything. You can put anything there. We're going to put data dash, we'll call this buttons, right? And then you could name that whatever you want. But for this, since this is our top section, we're actually just going to let this one have an ID, and we'll call this ID nav for navigation, or navigation just in general. Great. Great. And down here, we are going to have, in this section down here, we're going to have an ID that we're going to call display. All right. Great. Now, let's come down here and let's specifically target our display. And what we're going to do with it is we are going to make its width 500 pixels, and we're going to make its height 500 pixels, and we're going to make its background, or we're going to, yeah, let's just keep it at that, that's good. All right, we'll just keep it at 500. We'll put a margin on it just so it's separated up a little bit. Put a margin top of 100 pixels. Great. So it's going to move it down some. Cool. All right, now for each of the divs inside of that, let's put a background on it of EEE, and let's make the height 100%. Let's make the width 100%. And we're going to do something here. We are going to do position absolute on these, and we need to make sure that we come up here and do a position relative on this, and then we're going to make top 0, left 0. Perfect. Now what we have is we have panel 3 showing because it's essentially covering up panel 2 and panel 1. It's on the top layer of this, if you will. Great. So the idea, click item 1, panel 1 shows. Click item 2, panel 2 shows. Click item 3, panel 3 shows. So we'll actually begin by adding to this a class. So if the class is active, then we want the display to this to be block. But if the class is not active, we want the display to be none. Great. And now if you've not used CSS much, this is nesting, and you probably should go somewhere else to learn that process. So what we're going to do here is, you see, if we add class to this panel of active, then we see that it is showing. Now likewise up here, we're going to add some classes, and we're going to call this active also. Perfect. All right, and now up here on our item, for the item that is active, we are going to make the background color on it be just a little bit darker. So let's do like B7, B7, B7. And we need to make sure that that is concatenated. Great. So now you see there, B7, B7. Also, just out of a preference, I'm going to make the cursor be a pointer. Perfect. Great. So those look more like links now and buttons, and that's probably what I normally would use as a button to do that, but we're just flying through this pretty quick here. I'm not really worried too much about what it looks like. All right, so we have these classes here. Now, how do I get it to where when I click item 1, class 1 shows? Well, of course I could do a bunch of fancy DOM navigation and figure out, well, this was the first button, so show the first panel. This is the second button, so show the second panel. Or I can cheat the system a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is, inside of my item 1 here, I'm going to put a data dash panel. This panel is going to be a reference to the ID of each of these panels down here. So this panel is panel 1. Okay. This panel is panel 2. And this panel is panel 3. All right, so I've got data. This is going to be called, and I'm going to put a hashtag here, and you'll see why in a minute. That hashtag is actually going to be used as an ID reference here. I could do it without it. Actually, to be less confusing, I will do that without it for the moment being. All right, and then we'll come here and we'll put these other things in, so panel 2 and panel 3. Perfect. So when I click panel 1, I want it to open up ID panel 1, or show panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. Perfect. Okay, great. So obviously I'm doing that right now. Nothing works. It's because we haven't written any JavaScript whatsoever. So we're going to come here and we are going to say on document dot ready. It's always good to wrap it in that, just in case you're enqueuing your JavaScript before these load. If you're loading it in the head, obviously if you're loading in the footer, you don't have to worry about that so much, but it's just good practice. Okay, so on document ready, we are going to bind the navigation. So all of the LIs underneath navigation on click, we are going to do some sort of functionality with it. If you're unfamiliar with this, what I'm doing here, this is basic JavaScript. These are list elements, so I don't have to do this. There's nothing that happens by default on any browser that I know of whenever you click a list function. But if there were, this little E markup here would prevent it. This is very useful when you're mixing with links or buttons. It prevents any default action from occurring on those links. So that's a good little piece of code to have there in your pocket. So basically now, when I click this, something's going to happen here. And just to test that, let's say alert, test, and there we go. Now when I click, we see, hey, look, test pops up. Perfect. All right. So I think you see where this is going to go, but let's go ahead and let's do a variable here. And let's grab for whatever item is clicked. So you can grab that with this. So this dot attr, oops, I got to name the variable. Let's put this to be our panel. This is our panel reference. All right, we are going to grab the attribute data dash panel. So now if I alert that out, you see that what I have here is saying it's undefined. Isn't that interesting? Well, you can see here I put ADA panel and not data panel. So that's just a random typo, but now it is not undefined. It is in fact defined, which is great. All right, perfect. So we've got our panel reference popping up here. So you see panel 2, panel 3 as expected. So now what I can do is I can come down here and I can make a reference to it. Now I'm going to do something kind of ugly here. You see I put, look, on this click we are going to do this right here plus whatever our panel is. So you see what I'm doing here is I'm saying grab the ID, right? I'm actually saying inside of this it will grab the display element with that ID, right? That's what the hashtag, and that's what that does. In order to make this a little bit more clean, I'm actually going to come up here and I'm going to put that hashtag in the actual attributes. So what that does is whatever string is stored on my panel is now what I'm referencing, which is now this guy right here. And I'm going to add the class active. Now we have a logic issue here, but I'm still going to show you what we have so far. So we see panel 1 is showing. Now we see when I click panel 2 it shows. When I click panel 3 it shows. But when I come back and I click 2, nothing shows. And 1, nothing shows. That is because we're never removing active from the higher panel. So if we start this whole thing just from a logic perspective of saying, hey, look, anytime any LI is clicked, we need to start by going to all of the display divs, because those are our panels. And I probably should have put panel classes on those. And honestly, just to be a little bit cleaner, I'm going to do that. That way we don't have to do something really nasty, especially if we ever wanted to put data in those panels. All right, then actually what we'd say here is, look, so in display dot panels, okay, we want to remove the class active, and then all we're doing here is adding the class active back to whichever panel we're referencing. So if we come here, we go 2, 3, back to 2, 3 again, 1, 2, 3. See how it's showing all those panels? Isn't that nice? I think that's really nice. Great. And so now we see all of these showing. And then, of course, you can get fun with it, right? You can say, okay, I want to do this on every nth child, 3 and plus 2. This would be item 2. We want the background color on this one to be really dark, so we'll do 555, and we'll make the color white on it, and we'll do a different shade of gray for the final one. So let's go more of a like jet black on that. Okay, perfect. And so now you see that when I come here, there's the jet black, gray, dark gray, so the panels are actually changing. And you see how that works. So I hope that shows you how we grabbed these attributes, and it worked. Now, really quickly, let's see here what would happen if, for instance, I didn't have that. Let's say that it didn't have this attribute. Let's say the second one didn't have this attribute, right? Okay, let me show you how this works. So if I do this, basically what will happen is when I click 2, nothing happens, but it does hide everything. So what I could say is, I say, you know what, if item 2 is clicked, I actually don't want it to do anything. So right now it hides it. I don't want to do anything. Well, if we come back here and we test, well, what's actually happening? What's actually happening whenever I click panel? Whenever I click that second item, I'm going to alert whatever the value is. You see it kicks back undesigned, whereas here it kicks back an actual reference. Kicks back undefined. Well, this is where we can actually test in jQuery. And it's a little bit different how you have to test for it. I wish they had just like a .has attribute that really worked well. They don't for what we're doing. I mean, they have stuff that kind of does that. But basically, in order for us to use all this here, what we're going to do is we're just going to put a conditional here. So if type of, that's a keyword, panel, does not equal undefined. If that doesn't equal that, then let's go ahead and do these actions. And if it does equal that, we're just going to do nothing. So basically, I've just tested and said, okay, if the value of this is equal to undefined, if the type of that is undefined, then let's do nothing. So you see, nothing happens. But yet on 3, something happens. So 1, 2, nothing happens. 3, stuff does happen. So that's how attributes work, and that's how you can build a simple little tool to help you with a paneling project. And once again, if we were to come back here and add that attribute back in, data panel equals panel 2, then we see we are back to working as expected. All right, thank you. Actually, you know what? Bonus material here, because I felt like doing this. You can actually also address CSS stuff using attributes as well. So for these up here, for instance, my li elements, say I did an li element and I wanted to say also if it has the attribute, you can do that by using these brackets. So if I do data, this is to mess with the CSS based on it. So data for the panel 1, if it's equal to this, okay? So you see what I'm doing here? I'm saying if you have an li that also has data panel 1 in it, then it will do something with it. So if I wanted to say make the font size 25 pixels. There you go. See, it made the font size 25 pixels, or say I wanted to make it 50 pixels. All right. If I knew how to type pixels, then it would make that grow if I didn't use a $sign there. There you go. So see, 50 pixels. And it's just basically, for those of you who don't know SCSS as well, it's basically this rule right here. Equals panel 1. So you can also use these in CSS to grab things, is the point. So cool. Just thought I'd show it to you.